All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and present my lecture on the writing process. I know I haven't been able to be at school yesterday and today, so I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. This was supposed to be me in class doing it. Uh, we'll see what happens, though. It's too critically important for me not to deliver to you, so I'm going to try and make this a short video. Usually I take a long time to do this, but I'm just going to hit the key points so that you can take away what I need you to take away. All right, here we go. The writing process. I've been teaching writing for many, many years. I have a published book. I wrote several blog articles for a chess company. My book is a chess instructional book. I write newsletters. I write constantly. Okay, I do a lot of professional writing for organizations and things like that. And so this is the guide that I've developed to help coach my students to become an excellent writer as well. All of you have the talent. It's just maybe what I can do is lend you this process to make sure that the talent really shines through. Because everyone that has turned in writing so far has shown that they have deep thoughts and interesting thoughts and things to say, and let's make sure that we do that well. All right, so here we go. Before we begin, you can see that I pulled this from a previous assignment that I've done. This was the beginning of my writing course that I taught for 5 years in Marengo. And just some key questions to think about as you go forward. Oops, let me go back. That was one click too many. So basically, just think about, how do you produce a piece of writing? What is your process? And I'll bet that your process goes something like this. You get an assignment, you think about it, maybe you think about it some more, you think about it again, and then eventually you sit down and you start typing. And you type a few sentences, and then you kind of get stuck at some point, and then you say, oh, I don't know what to write next. So you stare at the screen and you call this writing, and you're staring at the screen for a little bit, and then you think, okay, well, I guess I could say this. And then you start typing again, you type another sentence or two, and you repeat this process off and on until you produce whatever the bare minimum is. Maybe you write only half a page when it was suggested that you write a full page, and you just, do double spacing and call it done, and then you click turn in. If that process or any part of that process sounds familiar, then this lecture is for you. Welcome to my writing class. How do I know this process so well? You may dare to ask. Well, let me tell you, it's because I used to do it myself. I was a high school student once. I know this happened back in the 1900s, a long, long time ago. And actually now the 1900s was a long time ago. That makes me feel really icky. But it was the last part of the 1900s, right? Anyway, so here we go. Thinking about your process. When did you develop that process? Did anybody ever teach you a process for producing writing? I'm guessing it probably did happen, but it happened so long ago and you ignored it and moved on because you developed these habits that just are what they are. So thinking about your process, are there changes that you should make, that you could make, or maybe there are things you don't want to change? Me, I have to have a beverage. Usually coffee. I'll go through a pot of coffee as I'm writing, or soda. I'm a big soda guy. Ginger ale has been my thing lately. That's something that I have to have when I'm writing. I don't know what it is about about drinking liquids while I'm writing. It's just part of it. It's a weird part of it, but it's a part of it. I also don't like having music playing when I'm brainstorming and coming up with the rough ideas because my brain just needs to go and can't be distracted. But when I'm drafting, and even when I'm revising, I love having music in the background. Those are some things I want to keep. Some of the things that I should have dumped a long time ago is I have an urge to just not revise because I think, oh, I'm an English teacher. I don't know how to do this. And I just want to send it off right away. So just that kind of stuff. Think about how you write. And of course, if we were in class, I'd have a whole big discussion around this. But really then start asking these questions. Are you happy with your final products? And don't tell me about the grade. It's not about the grade. When you click turn in, are you ever happy with it? Do you ever think this is a good piece of writing? I'm glad that my teacher will read this. Okay. Now, based on the writings that I've already had turned in from you guys, I know that some of you might actually feel this. Some of you are really, really good, talented writers. You've displayed that talent. Maybe you spent some time and crafted that My Defining Moment essay. But also I know that many of you are just getting it done and turning it in. So maybe let's adjust that for right now. Okay, so what would it take for me to convince you to improve your writing? Okay. What would it take to actually improve your writing? Do you think it's just some skill that you don't have, like I'm not a writer, Mr. Serwin, lay off? Or is it that maybe if we change your process, you might produce better writing? I think you have the talent. You just don't know how to use it, right? That's my skill as a teacher. It's not teaching you anything new. You know how to write. Clearly, you've done a lot of it. What I'm here to do is just help you learn how to do it better. Okay. Um, if we admit that your writing that you're turning in is not your best, then be honest with yourself and be honest with me. Why don't you make those improvements? Let's face it, it's because maybe C's get degrees, right? You're just trying to get it done, check the box, turn it in, do the C time, get your diploma, and get the heck out of here. Like, I get it. And so maybe you don't really have a motivation to make those improvements in your writing. Maybe it's because the assignments are boring and dull and you just don't care. Whatever it is, be honest with yourself, be honest with me. Again, if we were in class, I would love to hear you share these things. And feel free to tell me all the time about your writing process. It's all part of it. And I'd like to ask you to recognize that if you put in smarter effort, right, that whole old adage, work smarter, not harder. If you work smarter, don't you know, I think you do, that your writing would improve? You might not write like Stephen King, but you know that you could produce writing that you would actually like feel proud of, in the sense that you would know that you've communicated your ideas to somebody else clearly and effectively, right? Here we go. So I'm asking you to put in that extra effort, but I'm going to give you the time and the support, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So, and you might not believe it. Some of you are thinking, oh, you're just never going to be a good writer. Well, I believe it. You don't have to believe it. I believe it. If you believe that I believe, that's good enough for me. That we can start there. Okay. I know, having taught, this is my 16th year teaching. I didn't think I was going to be teaching for more than a couple of years, but here I am 16 years later, teaching almost as long as you've been alive. And that's really scary to say. But I know that every student that walks into my class can improve, and I've got 15 years behind me to prove it. So welcome to this journey. And then, of course, the writing process. Do you believe that part of it? So here we go. Who do you write for? Really, who do you write for? Do you write for teachers? Do you write to get the grade? Do you write for your parents because you got to get the grade to make your parents happy? Or do you write to impress your parents, maybe? Maybe they like when you write things and you like that sensation of showing them, hey, look what I wrote. Do you write for grades? Do you write for yourself? Like, oh, this is my diary. I'm never going to share it with anyone. This is my personal poetry, and it's for me to know, and I'm going to read it when I'm 35 years old and look back on life. And like, yeah, okay, that was me partly. But I look back at that poetry now, and let me tell you, I wish I had had a better writing process, because much of it is, ooh, no bueno. But anyway, do you write to impress your friends? Do you, when you write your social media messages, do you craft them in such a way that makes you think like, oh, people are going to love how I said that. That was a good zinger. That, you know, I really got that guy in that Facebook comment. I don't know if you guys even do Facebook. If you don't, you're probably better off for it. But anyway, think about like, who do you write for? Somebody else that I haven't covered? Now think about this. No matter who you write for, you should be writing for others. Not to please them, but to make sure that they understand what you have said. Period. And you should do it all the time, every time you write. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. All right. So here's the main steps of the writing process that I'm going to teach. There's pre-writing, several layers of that. Then there's drafting. Then there's revising and editing. Okay. So drafting is when you're writing. Revising is when you're looking, changing, altering in some way. Editing is when you're fixing. Okay. And then we repeat revising and editing, revising and editing, revising and editing, drafting, drafting, drafting. We're just constantly doing that until we get to a finished product and we publish it. Okay, so let's talk about pre-writing. We have to pre-write because pre-writing, if you have that experience of sitting down at the keyboard and typing, stop, type, stop, type, stop, think, type, stop, go get something to eat, come back, type some more, right? If that's your experience, it's because you didn't know what you wanted to say when you sat down to write, right? The part of our brain that has to figure out what our ideas are, it takes time, and we need to give it time, right? It's a freight train that's got 1,000 miles to go, and we keep trying to push that freight train all the way down the track as quickly as we can when we're doing this process of just not even pre-writing. We just launch into typing a draft, right? We can't do that. We have to let our brains do their thing. So pre-writing is multi-layer, right? First, we have to decide on what we are going to write about. Just generally speaking, what's the topic? We have to give our brain an area to look at, right? And start thinking about. Then we do this thing that I'll call TARPS. It's topic, audience, role, purpose, strategy, where we can take that general idea and start narrowing it down. This would be like if I said I wanted to write an essay on chess. Okay, well, there's the topic. Well, who's my audience? Am I writing to chess players? Am I writing to chess coaches? Am I writing to the parents of the kids on my team? To whom am I writing? If I'm writing to my chess players, then maybe my role, my speaker role, is a coach. If I'm writing to other chess coaches, my role is maybe the experienced chess coach, someone who's been doing this a while. So audience and role are very closely intertwined. And then, like, what's my purpose? Am I writing to persuade them to do something? Am I persuading my students to learn? Who knows? And then strategy is just, how am I going to do that? How am I going to arrange this? So we pick a topic and narrow it down to get to what we want to do, right? And then we start brainstorming ideas under that. So if I'm going to write a newsletter to other chess coaches about this crazy online chess season we're doing this year, what do I want to say? I want to talk about the details, and then just make a big giant list and get those out on paper. You thought pre-writing is done? No, this is the part at which now I would go and gather information. So if I need to do some research or things like that. So whatever information that I need to get into the piece of writing, whatever it is, I don't want it to be stuck in my head. I want to have it down on a piece of paper because my short-term memory can only hold a few things. And so that's why we get that stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, because we're trying to retain too much information in our heads. We're trying to do it all in our heads. Like, write this stuff down, put it on paper, get it out. Because as soon as it's out, our brain breathes a little, and then we can do better things creatively. We can come up with better ideas because we're not jamming the works, trying to remember all the other ideas we have to include. Right? So that's why it's so important to do this pre-writing step. And then if I have to go and get other information, research, look up things, whatever, pull information out, I should be doing that now, not while I'm already in the middle of writing an essay or whatever it is I'm writing. So that's the idea of these. Then once we have all the ideas out of ourselves and we've gathered all the information, now we need to start putting it together. Does that mean start typing? Heck no. It means we start organizing, right? Sometimes I refer to the brainstorm as brain vomit. We need to let all the ideas vomit out onto the page. And then, sorry, it's gross, we need to put our fingers in it and organize it. We need to make it a picture. We're going to take all these ideas that came out of us, and we're going to arrange them in a certain way that makes the most sense, not for us, but again, going back to the earlier slides, but arranging it in such a way that makes it make the most sense for our audience. Okay, so one of the things I would do is start with a working thesis and say, this is what I want to write about, and contained in that thesis should be some hint at my organizational strategy. And then we organize it because we want to make sure that our readers know how we're going to get from point A to point B. They might not understand the whole journey yet. That's what the essay is for, but we have to give them a roadmap. Okay, there's different ways to do this. Some people like those visual organizers with bubbles and lines and things. That's not my style. It might be your style. You can always use it. I'm an outline guy. I think very regimented. I like straight lines. That's just kind of who I am. I became a teacher probably because of that. But what I want to do is I want to just put these ideas and nest them, which idea belongs to which other idea. So whether I do that in an outline or a visual organizer, it's kind of up to us, how your brain works. So organizing is absolutely critical. So once we do that, think about what we've produced. We've gotten everything we want to say already on a page. we've organized it in a way that we know, okay, we're going to start here, and then we're going to move to this part, and then we're going to move to that part. And sometimes as we're drafting, we have ideas about what we should say in another part. Well, now that we have that map, we know where to put that information. So as we're writing and as we're developing and as we're moving along in this writing process, as these new ideas pop into our heads, because our brains do that, it has a place to go so that we can go drop it in that paragraph, either in the outline or maybe just a quick note on the side of a page, and we can let our brains dump that and move back to where we were and continue the drafting phase. The best way to do that is to just write it out. There's a lot of words on this slide, but basically what it boils down to is just keep writing. Once you start drafting, don't stop, right? You'll know what to write next because there's an outline. Because you have that outline, now you can say, oh, okay, I'm done with this part. Now what's next? And then you look over at your outline, and you say, boom, okay. And then you start typing on the next thing, whatever that may be, okay? And don't edit. Don't worry about editing. You just have to get the ideas that are still in your head, even though they're in the outline. You have to now you got to put them in words and sentences that make sense, not little words and phrases that you have on your notes, right? So now you're trying to verbalize it, which is a totally different mode of thinking. You're trying to take those ideas and put them in a way that your audience can hear, like I'm doing right now with words and sentences. Okay. So don't worry about getting it right. If you're writing and you're like, oh, I don't know the word for this, just type around it. Sometimes I can't think of a word for something, and I'll just say oh, the thing over there on the shelf. And then I just keep typing. And maybe I'll underline it or something, but I'll come back to it later when it's like, oh yeah, that's what that thing was, maybe 3 a.m, and I'm going for a bowl of ice cream for the 3rd time. I'm a large man. I can't help it. But really, this is how it works, right? I can go back and change things later. That's the beauty of writing. Okay. So you will, as long as you're going to make those changes later, it gives you the freedom to just draft. All right. So I said I was going to be quick, and I'm already getting long. Revision is the greatest gift. You ever walk away from a conversation and say, oh, that's what I should have said. The jerk store called and they're looking for you. Whatever, I don't know. You think of that thing, that perfect comeback, whatever, but you think of it, 45 minutes later. Well, because we have a revision step and because we've given ourselves time to revise later, now we have the ability to do that. If we do it in conversation, the moment's over. You can't exactly call your friend up and be like, I got you now. Right? It doesn't work. But if we haven't sent the email yet, we can go back into the email, change it, and then send it out when it's done, right? So this is all good. Revision is great. So revising is not editing. Let me tell you, if you follow this method, wouldn't it suck to go back and fix all the grammatical errors of sentences that you end up deleting or changing completely anyway? Why would you do that? It's a waste of time. So just leave the editing aside. Don't worry about grammar, spelling, punctuation. Don't worry about if it sounds good. Oh, it doesn't sound like a senior in high school yet. No, when I draft, it sounds like a 5th grader who's got a lollipop stuck to his face, right? That's my drafting phase. What I have to do is I have to grow that piece of writing as if it's a person, right? I need to move it along through different phases. So here's phase 1. Check your ideas. Have you said something clearly? And have you supported it? Is what I said true? Does it make sense? So the first thing you do is you go back through your draft and you just make sure that your ideas are present, and that they are somewhat clear. You don't even have to worry about if they're written well yet. You just want to make sure that you have the ideas, and that when someone reads it, if you think, oh, I'm writing about my experience, almost getting hit by a semi-truck on the highway. That's my topic, but I hand it off to someone and they're like, oh, this is an essay about your emotional well-being. And you're like, oops, I missed the mark. I need to fix that. So first you check your ideas. Then if we know the ideas are there, you check your organization. Have I put these pieces in the order that I like them? I read in one of the mind-defining moments, somebody's introduction took place on the day of their event. But then the last part of that paragraph said, oh, but let me start back at the beginning. This is too far. So I liked that technique where they gave me the important information up front and then gave me a transition that said, hey, now I'm going to show you the whole story that led up to this moment. Movies do that all the time. Why don't we do that in writing? We really should. I think that was really effective. So anyway, we can organize by section, by paragraph. We can even change sentences in paragraphs. And you're just making sure everything is where it belongs. So if you think, first you're checking your ideas, making sure that they are present. Then you're looking at how those ideas are arranged and put them in an order that makes sense. So you might be making a lot of changes along the way. And of course, you might be changing some sentences because you figure out a better way to say something. Because you're in the works, just go ahead, keep making those changes as you go. But you're going through a phase where you're organizing the ideas that are there. Then you look at your introduction and conclusion, right? Once you've organized everything, you talk about the introduction, conclusion. You can read those words there. Then, what is this, number 4? Then you get to revise the writing style. Now you worry about, did I say each sentence well? And it's a lot easier because now you know what's in the whole essay. You know where everything is. You know your ideas are clear. So now you can just kick up that language, right? And you can make some changes to make it sound good, to make it so that, like, if you wanted to, you could read it aloud and it would sound like a person speaking, right? So you revise, 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 revise. And then you get to editing. First level of editing, you're just checking to make sure it's not too wordy, because in some of those, as we're revising for style, we might get very verbose and use too many big words and it sounds kind of chunky and not right. So we got to go back and try to fix some of that stuff. And now this is the fixing stage. We're not trying to make it better. We're just trying to fix the rough edges. Okay. Then you check for like structural elements. Do you have those topic sentences in paragraphs? Do you need them? Are they at least implied? Do you have conclusions written in? Do you have transitions between paragraphs and sentences? And then you start looking for correct grammar and usage, right? So now you're basically at your final draft, okay? And you've had one draft that's constantly changing. Now you go through and you use like some fancy technological tool. You tell it check grammar, spelling, punctuation, and you look for those mechanical things, just the spacing and your stuff like that. So just fix all that stuff at the end, because think about what you did. You gave your brain time and space to come up with the ideas first. Then you took those ideas and you arranged them. Then you drafted, you just wrote it out. Then you revised. You looked at what you wrote and you made it as strong as it could be, right? You just kicked everything up a notch or two until finally you say, okay, this is it. This is where I want it to be. And then you just start kind of rounding out those rough edges, making sure that it's all proper and correct, right? If you've done all that, you've got a really, really great piece of writing in front of you. And it doesn't have to be this huge task every time you write something, but if you go through that in mini, where you think about what you're going to say, you think about how you're going to say it, then you say it, and then you kind of polish it up before you publish it. What are you putting out into the world? You're putting yourself. You're not putting out, I'm not telling you what to write. I'm not telling you how to write. I'm just telling you this is a method that intuitively would produce better writing. So now when you publish it, you get to do all this fun stuff. You get to make it look good on the page. Change your spacing, change your font, make sure maybe you're going to print it in brown ink on a tan colored paper and make it look, antique-ish. Maybe you're going to do a bright blue font on a, flat white page, or maybe, who knows, whatever. You get to make all those decisions, and you're just putting these flourishes to make the words not just the most beautiful thing on the page. And then you turn it in, kind of. But really, this is a writing process. I'm still revising my book that I published 7 years ago, right? I'm always working on it. I'm always changing things. I'm changing how I think about the world. So of course my words should change too. So there's all kinds of examples. Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, he wrote, umpteen million versions of it. And now, Leaves of Grass became this big, huge book from what it was just a small pamphlet size thing. So the writing process, this process, as you move through it, you're allowing yourself to discover what you want to say. You're allowing yourself to improve how you present yourself in text. And more importantly, you're finding out your true voice. This process allows you the space and the freedom to really express what's deep inside of you. When you just sit down and start slamming out an essay to check a box, is that really who you are? I don't know. Am I going to be able to learn who you are from what you produce? Probably not. And you know that. It's why you've never felt close to a teacher before, at least in writing. Well, this year we're doing a lot of writing, so this is our best mode of expression. I really, really hope that you internalize some of the things that I've talked about here. This is just an overview. I just wanted you to hear it. And then we're going to spend the next couple weeks like working through that process slowly but surely. And I'm not going to move on to the next step until I'm sure that my students have gotten the first couple steps. So if my schedule needs to change, it needs to change. I'm okay with that. I'm really excited for this. I'm really, really excited. I love teaching writing. Even if you don't like doing it, I hope that you can get a lot out of the experience of doing it in my class, and maybe you learn a new way of doing things, because you might not use this process every time you write anything. But hopefully by the end of this unit, if not the end of the year, you have hopefully I want you to internalize the idea that when you want to, you have the power to do it, right? That you have the tools in your toolkit so that when you need to write a letter to your senator, or when you need to write a letter to your, whoever, that you know how to produce the best writing you can produce. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare-worthy prose. It doesn't have to be Walt Whitman poetry. I want you to know how to produce the best writing that you can produce. And that's why we're here. There's a famous little quote of mine. Not mine. I shouldn't say that. It's not my quote. It's a famous quote that I use often. All right. I think there's some other stuff that I don't really need, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that tab. It was kind of a long video, but overviews the writing process, and I hope that helps you in the future. Let's get started, and I'll see you soon.